Wow, do we have some news for tonight between Google, Nvidia, some of these things after hours? Apple is soaring. I do think it's important to note that we did gap down on the S&P only to close at what we refer to as hammer time. Are we out of the way? Are we not? We're going to dive into that. Let's just deal with the basics. You have a doji. The next bar is to lift through that doji. So what we have here is a long-legged doji and then a close over that. That's what we have. Whether we complete the pattern and get back up to this 64, 61, it's going to take some time. I don't know that we know yet. I will say this. You're not oversold. You just stopped. So the easiest thing for us to do as traders is just mark the levels. 63.60 is where we were at, and you came right to that low again. So what I would do is just mark that off and just put a little alert there so that if it goes off, we are aware of it. Other than that, the higher high tomorrow is probably a given considering the Google news after hours because you're going to drive Apple and everything else up with it because it shows which way that this market is leaning when it comes to dealing with anything with monopolies. And it's really huge news, and we're going to jump right into it in 1 second here. But I do think I'd be remiss if we just don't spend a second on the cues. Let's get rid of the pre and the post. Please subscribe to the channel. Click all notifications. What we go over here is really timely, and tonight's is super timely. And now I'm going to have like mid-break clips during the day, so they'll be like 3 minutes long, so you're not going to want to miss those. And you're only going to see them if you're subscribed and click all notifications. I don't know that you have to think that that's a big deal, but that's a big deal that you did nothing but get bought all day. My larger issue here is that we didn't undercut and wash, and I would have liked the undercut and wash. We got it on the hourly. Okay, we can compare here and here, and what we would get out of that is this, clearly, right? We would get that positive divergence, meaning that we came to the same level and the RSI is definitely higher here. So we do get that positive divergence, and this can be there, but this is on an hourly chart. It's not really what we want to see. What we really want to see is something a little different. And what we want to see is that 4-hour hold up. And that 4-hour, we just haven't had that opportunity yet. I mean, you're aligned here on the 4-hour. So it's not like we really have something here that we could hang our hats onto. And I just want to get that out before we get any further. Let's get into the news. After hours, the biggest news was clearly Reuters reporting the U.S. judge issued a sealed decision on Google online search monopoly case. Now, it comes out sealed, and what's so interesting is that they obviously already had this because you could see from the call ratio today. But what's fascinating to me is if it's sealed, why do we all know about it? Alphabet shares are trading higher after Reuters reported U.S. judge sealed decision online search monopoly case. And I'm getting this out to you as fast as I possibly can, so bear with me. Reuters reports U.S. judge rules Google must share information with competitors. Okay, this is absolutely nothing. This is a nothing burger for Google. They were trying to break Google up. Google will not have to sell off Chrome. Judge online search monopoly case rules. So they get to keep Chrome. There's also some other things in here. U.S. judge rules Google will not be required to get rid of Android. Don't get rid of Chrome. Don't get rid of Android. Final judgment. Google will not have to sell Android operating system. Not required to cease payments to Apple. So that is interesting language, not required to cease payments. So doesn't mean that they're forced to continue payments. Now, Apple's up after hours as well. Others for preloading Google's products. And what we have here is U.S. judge orders Google to share search data with competitors. September 2nd. See, this came right out about a couple minutes ago. And what's so fascinating, again, just a couple key lines in here. Rejecting prosecutors' bid to make the internet giant sell off its popular Chrome browser. CEO expressed concerns at the trial in April, saying that data sharing measures sought U.S. Department of Justice could enable Google's rivals to reverse engineer its technology. I mean, that's a convenient thing to say, but it's also probably pretty accurate. I'm not an expert on it, but it certainly seems like it. Google has said it plans to file an appeal, which means it could take years before the company is required to act on this decision. On this decision, you're probably still going to file an appeal just because they can, but overall, they could not have asked for a better outcome. Ruling results in a 5-year legal battle, one of the world's most profitable countries in the U.S. Ruled last year the company holds a legal monopoly on online search-related advertising. I mean, I actually thought they'd break the company up just to get it out there. I thought, okay, and I thought if you go back to when they broke up Standard Oil, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to investors. Short term, the stock gets killed. Long term, but now they have this and it's completely behind them and the stock's acting great after hours. We'll get to that in a second. Said the proposals go far beyond what is legally justified to give away its technology to competitors. In addition, Google's embroiled in litigation in other markets. Companies said will continue fighting a ruling required its App Store in a lawsuit won by Fortnite. Google's is scheduled to go to trial in September. Remedies in a separate case brought by the Justice Department. Judge found the company illegal monopolies on online advertising technology. So they're not out of the woods, but this is very clear that, hey, you do not have to break up on this main case. And that's a really big deal for these guys. Now, I'll give you a couple key levels to watch. At the time recording, this is still unpacking. From an Apple perspective, what you'd want to do is just watch the high of that bar and then just see how that acts. That 230.72 is really where you're hanging out at. Since you broke out on the news and the payments are going to continue and they're going to have to be paid, and then you would just mark the high, which would be that 240 level. But this does a couple things for Apple. Number one, it allows Apple to know that, hey, if you have a monopoly, this is kind of the remedies they're going through. Number two, it offers a new revenue source and allows them to continue to operate with Google. Now, in regards to Google itself, this is how Google is acting. At the time of recording this, I am flat on the position, but I had a nice buy on this as soon as the news hit. I was surprised by the movement when they said the order's out and it's a sealed judgment. But like everything else, nothing is really sealed, is it? And now we all know what it is, and Reuters had it out there, which means somebody had it before them. It's a big club and we are not invited to it. But these are the key levels that I would watch. You can already see the flag forming. And this is really big news because this was an overhang why institutions would not go near it, why it was at a significant discount to all the other Mag 7 names. Remember, this one was trading at the cheapest level. And now you have your key levels right here. The only thing I would watch if you're going to see this later, after hours or even tomorrow, just watch the top of that flag and that doji, make sure you get out. The volume's starting to stall a little bit here, but I mean, it's really hard to not want to look at Google trading at one of the cheapest Mag 7 names out there. And you are in a situation here where now you just have blue skies above you and you're at a discount to the group. Now, the news after hours is having some effects on the market, clearly, and we can see that by seeing Microsoft actually dropped on the news, which I thought was pretty interesting. If you take a look at Meta, Meta's actually going up on the news. I think if you are a conglomerate and you are one of these huge powerhouses, you would actually go up, because if you're not going to break up Google, you're not breaking up anything. And again, just to show you from where we were recording earlier to where we are now, you can just see that it's done nothing but continually to lift and just provide opportunity. Remember to put these VWAPs out there for you guys. And then when they pull back near the VWAPs, it can usually offer other spots to enter those trades. It's pretty, it gets pretty clear how to enter those things on the pullbacks instead of chasing the rallies. You sell the rallies and you buy the pullbacks. Do a whole video on that. But the Meta being up, I'm surprised that Microsoft's not up on this news. It's kind of interesting. Now, maybe the Z-scaler is doing that. Maybe the Z-scaler is dropping it like it's hot because the Z-scaler broke. And this is why you always put anchored VWAPs on these, because you can see when they break, it tries to rally, look what happens. And then you kind of goes from there, right? So it rallies, pulls back, tries to break out. Boom, Matumbo, as you guys know. And now look at you, sitting there all sad, eating Hot Pockets in your mom's basement, right? Or you could have just put an anchored VWAP right here, and that would have been the end of it. So now we look at this and go, maybe that's when Microsoft's down. But this was huge news, and you had some real movers today, and I think that's pretty interesting. But if you take a look at this for example, this MLYS, which was something we actually did buy today, you had really good news. Stock just exploded to the upside on that news. Massive volume here. And you could just see that it just absolutely just exploding to the upside. So I use vol scans. I created them. So but, if you're trying to figure it out yourself, just put a 50 or a 20 here. And whenever you're 5X over, pay attention to it. You really just want to pay attention to them. I mean, it's pretty clear that this was on that list, right? Like it's not rocket science that you were 5X over. So the real clean way to do it versus the way that I'm doing it. But this is a way that you don't have to have something that's like complicated or something that is just, going to be hard to follow along. Like this is pretty clear, right? Here's your moving average. And then you calculate what the moving average is. You times it by 5 and you're over. Okay. I mean, it either works or it doesn't, but that's how you define them. And you set scanners and alerts. You can actually put alerts on these if you're in TradingView. And just, when you get over, click it. So if it's up over a high period of time and then it gets back over, like in here, you'll start seeing sometimes they provide opportunity. But stuff like this breaking out is huge. And then, of course, you have we're going to do a secondary. And of course, you're going to do a secondary because you just hit the lotto. So of course, you're going to do that. But you can see your levels in here and how you're acting. I mean, it's perfect. Like that is perfect. If there was ever a chart that was the cat's pajamas, that's pretty much it. You opened and gapped up over the all-time highs. And then boom, you just exploded to the upside. It doesn't get any cleaner. So now you're going to do the secondary dance in 2 to 3 days. This will probably turn around. But watch this, because if they do a quick, that's what's impressive. So in other words, if you do a quick secondary, like if it's on tomorrow and they're already like, oh no, the secondary's done and it was oversubscribed, then it's on like Donkey Kong and you're going to want to pay attention to that. That's for sure. Something else that I thought was interesting, why we're out here naming things. I don't really know why we have to keep changing the names of things, but whatever. So we have this meeting at 2 o'clock today that was supposed to change the way that the world worked. And it really didn't do much. I'm going to get rid of this one and we'll go to this AC and I'll show you something. So one of the things that I like to focus on are put and call walls, and you can get them from different services. I pay for them on a couple different services, and I'm actually going to go back in old school. I used to get the direct feed and create them myself, and I'm actually just going to go back and do that and then just start showing you guys where they are, because sometimes the ones on these services, they're not exact. They're not, how can I say this? They're not dynamic. They're static. And I understand why, because they have to pay for the data, right? But they're not as good as they could be. And so when a put wall or call wall moves, you kind of want to know that. But this was a perfect trade today. So your call wall's up here, and guess where your put wall is? In red. Yay. So when you've been in here a couple times, you just keep bouncing. We actually went over this for everybody today on the live pre-markets. You should watch those. But if you're watching this area, it was perfect. Like, this provided a perfect opportunity. And it was a perfect trade too. And I'll tell you why, because since you asked, it's because it was perfect because what tariff is going to affect this company? Nothing. You have massive tariff overhang right now, and nothing is going to affect it. And I don't think we're swimming in world peace right now. So maybe we should start looking at the defense companies, and this opened perfectly right into this area, providing opportunity. I got out when I started to see the first cracks in here, made about 4 points. Some of the guys just wanted to ride it, ride the lightning a little bit longer, which is fine. I don't do that when we have cracks in the market like we had today. I tend to just want to, lock it and move on to the next one. That's really where my head is in environments like this. But this was very clear that you were going to gap fill. Here, watch it live. Does PLTR hold that? You may hold here because you're right against that 150. I still want to watch this 150. I'm going to buy PLTR. I'll know fast. I'll know real fast if they're going to squeeze it or not. Yep, there we go. That was the one near that put wall that made the most sense and has nothing to do with tariffs. They're already up $1, trimmed. I'll use the rest here for the rest of the day, 29. If it breaks 29, I'm out. New highs. Trimmed, rest, break even. Thank you very much. Or you can use low of the day, but I think that can keep pushing. New highs on PLTR, trimmed. I don't like that at all. You should be doing that. Out 100%. You can use your stop at break even. You do whatever you want with it. When I start popping over and then undercutting like that, yeah, no thank you. I'll take my profit, go from there. Now, hindsight's a beautiful thing. And the important thing about this trade is a couple of things. Number one, when I see stuff like this where I pop over on these day trades, you see how you pop over on Wick and then you're going to give me this kind of shooting star and the undercut. I'm just not going to play games. I'd rather I'm in, I'm out. Thank you very much. People are like, well, you could have, yeah, I could also buy the stock back. I could also buy another trade. So the thing is to have, for me, it's consistency. I don't have to worry about getting the most out of one trade because I just go to the next trade. And as long as the process works, think in terms of abundance, not scarcity. You don't have to squeeze it all out of one trade. That's not how this works, not how any of this works. But you're wedged in here right now, and now we'll see how this goes tomorrow. What do I think's important right now more than anything is watching how some of these other names are acting. So I think the MDB was super interesting today. Now you have a big problem up here with resistance, but look at how you're wedged in and how this thing closed at the highs. This is very different than what Crowd did today, which did do the undercut but held. And I would watch this tomorrow. I think that this was a complete flush of, hey, we've got them trapped. Let's flush them. And I wouldn't be surprised to see this hold. So I'm definitely going to watch this. I am in this, so I am biased. But I definitely think there's something to this here. And then, of course, you can go take a look at Snow. So we start looking at these companies that had earnings that were software companies. You had to say, out of these three, which one should you look at tomorrow? I mean, it's very clear, right? MDB would be the one that would fit the criteria of the one that you would probably want to be paying the most attention to. I think for me, the most interesting thing with the stocks is that you opened at the low and you closed at the high. Does that mean that we're done? I'm having a tough time here saying that this is over. And the only reason I feel that way is because I didn't undercut. And I don't have to undercut, right? I can just drop and then be in this range. And the question is that enough? And I don't have an answer to that. Like, I'm going to be real clear about that. Like, I don't have an answer. Some other people are going to say, oh, it's definitely bottomed. I don't see it that way. I mean, I've got a negative divergence here. I've got a lower low that we've undercut on the SOX. So I don't see it. If we go take a look at ASOX and we see how this is playing out, that's not playing out great either. And then if I go take a look at that's the AI semiconductor. So you break it down, right? And then if you look at ESOX, we've undercut here, even though we're higher. So I have a negative divergence there. And all this going into AVGO. Now, AVGO, you can see the red, which is the put wall. But what's so fascinating about this is you have earnings this week. And yeah, you had a bunch of people that went out there and bought calls in it. But with NVIDIA's earnings that just came out and their data center wasn't the best, there was growth, yes, but it wasn't like it normally is. So now the question really becomes, how does this play out? In other words, what do we see happen here tomorrow? And I don't, or this week, it's actually Thursday. I don't have an answer to that. This could really be pretty ugly. And again, you beat last time. Don't get me wrong, you did beat, but by a little bit. And if you start looking at these quarters, they're not like these enormous blowouts. They're guides that are moving you higher because they guide effectively. Could you miss, or could data centers be off, or could you have a problem? You could, the way that this thing's setting up, and that's going to definitely be an issue for us. The other thing that I think is really important for us to watch here is going to be Bitcoin, because Bitcoin came all the way back down to that neckline on this handle. And I said when they formed the handle from the cup, I'm like, man, that retest was kind of lame. Well, here's a real retest of that. And if we overlay this with the 12, 22, and the 55, you can see where you're at. But if we go and look at it this way, and you start to see this is the 3, the 5, and the 8 on a 15. So this is a 3, the 5, and the 8 on a 15 minute. So they're daily moving averages on a 15-minute chart. And you can just see the waves, right? I mean, it's not crazy. It's not rocket science. Red on top means what? Stop. Yay. So you can see that red on top. And then in here, you flip. Green means go. I just color coordinate them. Why? Because it's so easy to look at and just go, oh, well, green's on top. Maybe I should pay attention. Oh, look, green flipped. What happened from when green flipped? Oh, good. We went higher. So it's building here, and you're having these little flags. So maybe there's something to it. Look at the 4-hour. And this is really what you want to see when you're looking for a bottom. You're like, oh, okay, well, so we're here and then we're there. So we have a lower low and we hit and then we broke out. So there's a real good chance that did bottom. There's a real good chance that this does hold by looking at this, at least in the short term. So that should give us some stability. And then what we would want to do is take a look here as well. And we could see that Ethereum is going to do no such thing. And then what we might want to do is just compare the two and go and take a look at them on a relative basis, right? And we get rid of the RSI for a second and see, oh, okay, so here is Bitcoin divided by Ethereum, so we can look at the relative performance. Come on, there you go. And you can just see the undercut. And so if you were to look at this from a charting perspective, on an hourly, you'd be like, oh man, we're setting up, we're going to break out. I mean, anybody would look at this and be, all giddy, all excited, and you can see it. Why? And this is really what you crazy kids buy instead of gold. So when you see something like that, it's really hard to miss, right? And you could see why Bitcoin might outperform Ethereum now. And then if we take a look at gold, for example, I wanted to buy gold today, and then I bought a little, but I didn't go nuts. I mean, that is a classic breakout. That doesn't get any clearer. My hope is I was going to come in today and have that opportunity to get involved here, and they just ripped it away from me. And then they're just ripping a lot of these names like SSRM and other names away. This has an exhaustive feel to me, that everybody felt the need that they had to buy it today. And that doesn't mean that the move's over longer term, but it does tend to me that, do I really need to get involved today when I started looking at these? And I feel like I'm going to get my opportunity, that this is exhaustive. I feel like I'm going to get my opportunity for some kind of pullback there and take a look at them from there. But tomorrow, the biggest news is going to just be watching Google. You are up substantially after hours now, and a lot of people missed this move. That is it.